I don't know. It hasn't been set up. I think it should be done. The service agriculture
employment fund.
Youth Employment Fund. That was in paragraph 1103 of the 2000.
You're talking of a different fund. The president promised the Youth Development Fund.
I'm referring to, please. I'm referring to paragraph 1103. Anybody who has it should go and read of the 2013 budget statement. Youth Employment Fund. It has not been set up. You see, if we are going to manage the economy like this, then how do you make progress? We cannot even agree on the things we ourselves have written. Now, you have agricultural estates to be set up to help with people going into agriculture. That has just not happened. I want to hear the president's perspectives on this, and then we're advising the president's sessional address that there will be quarterly employment surveys to inform us about where the shift is and where the emphasis is. That has also not happened. I want to hear the president on this. On education, we said 200 schools. It is obvious that given the state of the economy now and the difficulty with government fiscals, we will not be able to do this. I mean, the governance is difficult. The president has promised. If government considers that in the current circumstances it cannot do it, I want a bold admission of this and to say, perhaps we will need to wait a few more years for this to happen instead of having it there when clearly we just do not have the money. I don't know where the money is going to come from. In 2030, we put just 1.3 billion Ghana cedis into domestically financed capital expenditures. I'm looking at the budget right now. I'm looking at what has happened to the cedi and the fact that the fiscals, even in the 2014 budget, would have to be reviewed. And I will be kind to government to say it will be unfair to put pressure on government to produce those 200 schools. But we're told about a review to make school fees affordable and all that in the last sessional address. I want to see whether we're still with that policy. Finally, I know we do not have all the time. On corruption, whichever way you look at it, perception of that there's corruption has gone up. And this is informed by the GIDA matters, the related matters. You see, it is very easy to say, oh, well, we are doing something about it. You think that's what Ghanaian wants? That people chop their money, then we do something about it. Then people chop money, then we do something about it. People want the corruption stop. And if you look at the problems with GIDA, they were all procurement issues of procurement. I want to see this sole sourcing that was supposed to be a window to be used in exceptional cases has now become the norm in many cases.
So do you think the president is slow in taking actions?
What I'm saying is that as for if we have been doing well in the past, we will not be here. What I am looking to hear from the president is not so much about what we have done, what we have done. If what we have done have worked, we will not be talking about some of these issues in these terms today. I'm saying that the perception of corruption is going up. I want the president to deal with that element of sole sourcing. The president has some control over the Public Procurement Authority. We must go into it. Why is it that which was supposed to be a small window through which, where we have emergency or where what we're procuring can be procured from only one source, then the law said, let's provide a small window so that we do not box ourselves in. Now that has become the norm. Anything, if you go into the SUBA issues, the GIDA issues, and most of it was sole sourcing. You see, it is not sufficient, as I said, to say, oh, we are dealing with this. You must go to those institutional adjustments you need to make so that these things become more difficult. We need to go there, and I want to hear the president. That will be the bold strategies for dealing with corruption. Finally, the merchant bank matter. The merchant bank, you hear that ENP has now gone to settle their to settle their indebtedness. To who? To the new owners. ENP that had difficulty. 2009. It was so difficult to be servicing these debts and to be paying off. They didn't pay off. In the agreement with Randgold, I was opposed to the Randgold matter. What were we told? We were told in the agreement with Randgold that Randgold was not interested in the debt, the private people who had contracted money from merchant bank. The new owner said, I'm not interested. What that meant was that merchant bank, when it is acquired, because there's a clause in there that says we've written off these debts, we are not interested in it. I do not know which institutions would have the legal capacity to enforce those things against the debtors, because their agreement was with merchant bank. That would not be in a position to enforce people. Quickly, I'm landing on this. It's very important to me, because these are the things fueling the perception of corruption. Now, I was happy when that contract did not work, but even with Fortis, 30% will be absorbed by Fortis, 70% will be shared between SNIT and the new owners. Now, the question I'm asking is, why do private people take money? And me, I don't really care whether it is the president's son or the MP, or I hear people mention NPP. I don't really care. When people collect money from state or quasi-state institutions, they must pay back. Now, we say that 70% of that will be absorbed by the pensioners. You came for my money. I set up an investment merchant bank to support pension fund, pension management. You come in and you borrow money from the project. You don't repay. And now that investment is changing ownership. And we say, me the pensioner, I'm taking a part of the burden anyway. And what do we see? Immediately the transaction happens. Some of the debtors now go to the new owner. And then they settle this debt. And what? The lawyer for some of these debtors, EMP specifically, is also the lawyer for Fortis. You see, you can justify it and say, oh, in law, when people look at these things, then the perception of corruption deepens. What I am saying is that I want to hear clear strategies even from government. If we're going to have some guidelines on how state institutions would be privatized, if the procurement issues will be addressed, we want to hear these strategies from the president.
Okay, I came back to you, Eribata Sami.
Yes, you see, we need to posit this. And you see, I made this point when I made my earlier submission, that the minority has said we should tell the true state of the economy. I expect members of the opposition not to be economical with the truth, but we should tell ourselves the truth. That's the only way we can progress as a nation. Okay, when the president said that the economy was resilient, he has been justified. He's been vindicated with the fact that we still have a cedi which can appreciate against the dollar, irrespective of the challenges which the economy has faced in the past 3-4 weeks. Okay, with the quantitative easing. You look at the BRICS nations and the mint nations. These are emerging economies. Ghana is not even termed as one of them. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Mexico, Indonesia, Nigeria, and Turkey. And on the average, the currencies over the past 7 weeks depreciated by 20%. Our currency depreciated by 17%. That is not to say it is ideal.
So what
but that tells you,
insinuating?
yes, I'm pointing out the fact that our economy is resilient enough to withstand some of the shocks. You have some economies whose currencies have lost 40% of their value. So if our economy has been able to hold back and peg back at 17%, it shows you that, and this is with us injecting $80 million during this period. Normally we inject $60 million a week. Now it's $80 million. You see, if my brother wants us to go to really, really look at figures and statistics, okay, when the redenomination was done, okay, in July of 2007, between July of 2007 and December of 2008, under the watch of Dr. Bawumia, the cedi lost 30% of its value. And this was with an injection of 1.2 billion, not million, 1.2 billion US dollars into the economy. Because when the cedi was redenominated, the cedi was changing for 0.92 Ghana cedi, or Ghana pesos, 0.92 pesos to the US dollar. At the time the MPP was leaving government, it was 1.2. It had lost 30% of its value in 18 months. And this was with an injection of 1.2 billion US dollars, 900 of which came from the sale of Vodafone, of GT to Vodafone. Capital injection into the economy. And that is why at that point in time, people said the economy was being managed on steroids, because it is not realistic for you to be pumping 1.2 billion every 18 months into your economy. You can't maintain that over a long term. That is not the way to fix an economy. The president is looking to fixing the economy. In fact, in the first 30 days of the redenomination, the cedi lost 10% of its value. And this was without any external shocks. So if the president tells you that today, we don't need to dope, we don't need to give any narcotic infusion to our economy to keep it standing, to keep our city able to rebut some of the challenges it faces, you must understand where the president is coming from and appreciate the truth in that statement. When it comes to the issue of education, you raised the questions about the senior high schools. I think that is our challenge as an administration to focus on. We don't need you to give us an easy route out. That is like taking a Trojan gift, a gift from the Trojans. Okay, Honorable Kwarteng is saying he thinks that we shouldn't burden ourselves. 2016, that is going to be the swan song for them. We have made that promise.
You won't do it, huh? Is that an admission that by 2016?
No, I am saying that if we take your offer, that will become your swan song. Don't mix me up.
So you build a school.
I am saying that, and I'm saying this on record. In 2016, going into the election period, I'm going to plead that you bring myself and Honorable Kwarteng back here. We would have the 200 senior high schools in progress. Some of them would have been completed, some will be, but the 200 will be started. This year alone, I can assure you that by close of this year, 100 will be started. The president will cut so within the next couple of days for the first batch of 50. Coming to the issue of corruption.
Just 1 minute. Now, what most Ghanaians are thinking now is politicians always coming to say, I will do this and I will do that, but it doesn't wash.
I told you that this is not going to be a state of the nations. The impression I get from where I sit is that this is not going to be a state of the nations address where promises are going to be made. We are being realistic. The schools, it is not promises. The first 50 have gone on tender. The tender process has been completed. Award letters are being drafted. So this is not a promise. This is reality. This is reality. Another 50 are under consideration by a consortium of Ghanaian real estate agents, real estate companies. You understand me? So this is not promises. This is reality.
Okay, now to corruption.
Okay, now when you come to corruption, you see, I'm surprised. My brother Kwarteng appears to have been lost in the train, or he dropped somewhere at one of the bus stops in the train of the NPP and their propaganda machinery, because the NPP's propaganda machinery has moved on from the song of corruption. They've moved to the economy. He's still singing the corruption song and saying the perception. You see, that perception was fueled by the NPP. There were the perception of corruption, that the president was corrupt. Okay, and then he comes back, goes round full circle, and comes to end on the merchant bank issue. You see, if we want to tell the Ghanaian people that we are concerned about their welfare, about their bread and butter issues, I'll ask you, how does the merchant bank sale put food on the table of the ordinary Ghanaian, if not for pure propaganda?
No, that is
pure propaganda.
Sam,
you see,
that is called Ghanaians want transparency.
And who says there was no transparency? Who says there was no transparency? Who says they don't know what is happening? The NPP claims they don't know what is happening. The NPP cannot speak for Ghanaians.
About Ghanaians.
There is no proof that what you're saying is true. There's nothing to establish the veracity of your claim that Ghanaians do not know what happened in the merchant bank.
Ghanaians
that is not correct.
So they want transparency into it. And I am also putting it to you.
No, listen, what is the basis for you to say most Ghanaians don't know?
I said perhaps because
okay, now you're setting in a caveat of perhaps.
Do you understand? That's what I said.
And I'm telling you that caveat will not even fly on the face of scrutiny, because the merchant bank for this matter has actually been one of the most publicized mergers or acquisitions in the history of this country. So you cannot possibly make the claim that perhaps many Ghanaians are more interested.
People do not know because he carried it on several occasions on this network.
Josephine, most Ghanaians are interested in finding out how the president is going to fight the acts of corruption that went on even before he came into office. And that is what His Excellency the President has going for him. That is his track record. You see, you can sit here and talk and try to spin the facts about the merchant bank deal. You see, but before even Fortis was able to buy the bank, the facts had been known that engineers and planners' inability to pay that facility to the then merchant bank at that time was not as a result of their own unwillingness to pay, but as a result of the frustration from the then board of the bank. You understand me? And then the point had been made even before the sale was completed that a transaction was being carried out by another bank. In fact, a foreign bank in Ghana, a Nigerian bank, was facilitating the process of payment. So if someone wants to sit here and say that, oh, it's just as a result of the sale, and that is why engineers and planners has been able to pay, that again is an untruth. Now, another thing which has been said repeatedly on so many platforms, and my brother Kwarteng has repeated it, is extremely erroneous, is the fact that majority of projects and contracts were signed using sole sourcing. Take the Auditor General's report, and you realize that for 2012, only 8% of all contracts were done with sole sourcing. Yet we sit down and say that majority of contracts. Since when? What kind of mathematical calculations are we doing that 8% becomes majority? Look, we must tell ourselves what the truth is. I'm putting this out, that this whole talk that the sole sourcing process has been abused as a figment of somebody's creative imagination, and it is not representative of the truth, and that less than 8% of government contracts were taken out on sole sourcing.
All right.
This is in the Auditor General's report. It is clear.
3 minutes.
Look,
then we'll move on to other
quickly on this sole sourcing. Suba, it was sole sourcing. What please, if I can go on. I am calling for. You see, that's a different. That's why these days I'm losing my appetite for this kind of. I'm calling for institutional responses from government. That when you have Suba, let's even assume that just one. You say somebody should go and monitor. The person says, well, monitoring of revenue. Why should it be sole sourcing? Why? Why should monitoring of revenue by our telcos be so sourced? And then you have this, look at the JIDA. The JIDA, I cited these things to make the point that we want institutional responses. And that's why I spoke about whether it is some guidelines to be given to the Public Procurement Authority to reduce it to, oh, it's 8%. And so what? So if it's 8% and it was improper, so we should leave it? Please. And then you see quickly.
Please. A reference to 8% as
whatever it is. What I'm saying.
Majority points down one after the other.
Whatever it is, what I'm saying is that the experiences of JIDA and Suba have shown us that sole sourcing has become an avenue for corruption, and therefore we want institutional responses with which every government would abide, not just the NDC. If we make institutional changes, and as a result, it becomes difficult to do certain things now, it will be difficult to do those things also in the future. Don't reduce this to an MPP and MP. Besides, look, Josephine, respectfully, when I speak, I made specific points. I am saying that the GET fund, for instance, we collected 691, only 166 went. And therefore, government, we ought to hear from the president today how he intends to deal with that matter, because the monies we are collecting also has a percentage going to these statutory funds. I want responses. I want policy responses to these matters. The cedi falling, everybody knows it. If the cedi now is resilient, and that is the view of the government, that is okay. The Bank of Ghana has come out to increase the policy rate. What is that going to do? That is also going to increase lending rates. These are specific facts, and I am looking for discussions in which people respond directly to this. That, well, it is so, but we consider that it will not hurt us so much, that we want to expand our production base, but making credit more expensive will not hurt us. We want proper responses, but when we degenerate into, in MPP time, the cedi fell, in what way does that solve the problem? Please, so let us focus. I never mind that many of the things I said were critical of government. What I'm expecting, that is what I'm supposed to do. Those of us who understand the economy and who are in the minority, it is our job to look for things that ought to be done better and to point them out. What I expect government and government spokespeople to do is to come and say, this specific fact you gave is not true. I've given several facts. We just brought it in the fuel of propaganda and NPP. Please, if we don't get away from that, as for government getting criticism, you get criticism. Some of the things I have been pointing out, They could have been pointed out by civil society. Indeed, many civil society people have pointed these things out. So the earlier we run away from this NPP, NDC, and respond to specific issues, the better it will be for us.
I responded to your issue about sole sourcing, and now you have changed your stance on it. You said majority of contracts that were
let me quote what I specifically said.
We're giving out under sole sourcing, and sole sourcing, which was supposed to be a small window, has become a huge norm. Okay, now how, and that is why I ask a simple question, except I don't understand the concept of mathematics again and division and the understanding of simple English, that 8% will be seen as greater than the other 92%.
8% by what? In terms of the money quantum involved, or the numbers
of all contracts by government.
That is the point.
Okay, were done using sole sourcing, less than 8%. And so when you say that is the norm, when I carry out 100 contracts and 8 of them are giving out using sole sourcing, and 92 of them go through the regular tender process, you cannot by any stretch of the imagination call that the majority. Also, when you look at the Suba issue, for example, you must understand that there are certain guidelines under which sole sourcing is agreed for. One of which is the availability of the technology in question, and how many of the companies that had that technology actually puts in a bid. In Ghana, how many companies had the technology to do that monitoring? How many indigenous Ghanaian companies have that capacity?
You see, I try to avoid those. Maybe so you said this, you did it as though we are some secondary school boys debate.
This is not secondary school.
What we are here to achieve is, in the end, an improved system. Now, you have given a figure 8%. You are not able to tell us whether it is 8% by the quantum of the contract sum, or just counting the number of projects. When Suba, you said the number. Now, it will be useful information if we can be told how much money goes into those contracts that are sole sourcing. Then you have an idea what people are doing. Of course, I did make the point that sole sourcing was supposed to be used sparingly, in exceptional, when there's disaster. Then I made the point that, but that small window has now become the norm. And I cited JIDA and the Suba contracts and all this. What do you get from that? Is if you want to latch on to the fact that, well, if you say it's the norm, then it's the majority, and you want to turn that part of the discussion into the main discussion, without commenting on, do we need institutional arrangements to deal with whether it is the norm? And it's a language I use all the time, that when a window is provided in a law to be used sparingly, and right now I can point to you, that happened through sole sourcing. I'm saying that these have been fraught with corruption. We saw the afforestation project, the guinea fowl. Now we have come round to cancel those contracts. The money that were put into those contracts, would those monies be refunded to the state? If we would look at these things, whether by the norm you accept that these things are improper, a small window for emergency situations should not be used like this. If you accept that, then you join me in calling for institutional reform. If you hinge on
if we want to talk about institutional reform, take for example JIDA. For the first time, we are going to have a JIDA bill, a bill that regulates JIDA. That is institutional reform.
Well, that was promised. It has not come. It was promised. It has not.
I'm coming. When did this whole matter come up? When was the directive given? When were the directives given? You should know better. You are a legislator. That bills putting together bills are not something that somebody
sees in Parliament. What are you talking about?
You understand me? That is the point I am making.
So it's not a bill.
There is the work is going on as we speak now. For it to come to cabinet, for its cabinet approval, for it to come to Parliament.
All right.
So when you talk about institutional strengthening, the president will not just automatically bring something. It will go through a process. That process is being done.
Okay, so there's been
what you're calling for is already
back
being
and
done.
forth here and there. We'll be expecting the president to give the true state of the nation's address today, and then we'll take it from there. As to exactly what he's coming to say, we don't know. But as we all know, there's so many issues. Talk of corruption, talk of energy, talk of water, a list of them. So let's see what will happen. All right, welcome back to the program. It's Good Morning Ghana, live from our studios here at Metro Television, proudly brought to you by Lipton, a sign of good taste. My guests for this morning, Samuel George, a member of the NDC, and Honorable Kwaku Kwarteng, who is the MP for Obuasi West. Let me take a few of your Facebook messages, and this says, "Good morning, Joe. Honorable Kwaku Kwarteng is not being truthful about sourcing facts. Under the NDC, available statistics from the Public Procurement Authority is crystal clear. We have never exceeded 8% of annual public procurement. Simple facts and figures through stunts." And this came from Dr. Manibwama to you. And this also says,
so
"Good
it
morning."
buttresses the point I was making.
Good morning. I want to ask if, okay, I'm sorry, I can't read that. I'm sorry. Okay, the current state of the economy has worsened from bad to worse. That is why it was postponed by government. Ghanaians are expecting the 3 states of the nation today. And this came from Jesse Boyko. Okay, so that'll be on Facebook messages. That'll be all. Let's do some other discussions. At the back page of the Ghanaian Times, it says, GWCL reschedules Oppong water plant shuts down. So the Ghana Water Company Limited is saying this. So the plant shutdown of the Oppong water treatment plant yesterday by the Ghana Water Company Limited for a major maintenance work has been rescheduled for Thursday, February 27th to Sunday, March 2nd, 2014. The Chief Public Relations Manager of the company, Michael Ajimai, disclosing this to the Times in Accra yesterday, asked residents in areas to be affected as a result of the shutdown to take note of the new dates and store enough water for the period. It said the rescheduling was to allow water supply in the Accra metropolitan area to stabilize following the resumption of water production at the Wager treatment plant. Its named areas to be affected as including Tema, Asharman, Lashibi, Michelle Camp, Afienya, Pram Ningo, Somenya, Dodowa, Equapem Ridge areas, Adenta, Medina, Ashalibuchi, East Legon, and Asharman. Other areas are Kwabinya, Taifa, Domi, Achimota, and surrounding areas, Big Farm, Jawulu, Roman Ridge, 37 Military Hospital, Abelinkpe, Airport Residential Area, Nima, Kanda, Kutubabi, Cantonment, Spinders Road, Teshin, Nungwa, and surrounding areas. It went on to also say that the pond intake plant and the Accra Tema Metropolitan Area Rural Rehabilitation and Expansion Project were critical, acting that some of the pipelines have been there since 1968. So I begin with the Honorable Kwarteng. This is the issue.
Well, it reflects the investments into the delivery of social services, which I commented on earlier. At the time we're looking to expand our manufacturing and to shore up our exports, we should look on the difficulty with these utilities as a big matter. And it is good today we are going to hear the president. The traditional posture towards water delivery generally and has been that somehow we are uncomfortable getting private capital into it. And yet, over the years, governments have been unable to put in the needed budget money. And the evidence right now is that we're not going to put in any new capital investments into water, any significant levels of investment. If you look at how much we need to change the infrastructure, and especially in Accra, Tema, and in many of our big communities. In my own constituency, Obuasi, water, it's a big problem. Now, what we ought to be asking ourselves, and the debate that I hope today, given that the president is delivering his address at a time when we have an acute water shortage in many parts of Accra, is going forward, are we going to get money from somewhere and put into these social services, or government is looking to bring private capital? And if it is, what form it would take? If we get that kind of lead from government, then we cannot examine it and contribute to its success. But these problems are always going to come, even when we're supposed to have normal water delivery in Accra, even when many towns do not have water. And it would almost appear that somehow we have come to accept that as the norm. And people tell you, oh, where I've lived there, 10 years, and I can count the number of times water has gone through my pipes. And we have almost accepted that that is how it's going to be. As we begin to discuss expanding our manufacturing and creating jobs and expanding economic activities, we need to look at these input issues. And today, I will be happy to see how the president triggers this. And I say this because I have gone through the 2014 budget, and of course even the 2013, and I don't quite see the bold and previously unknown strategies to address this. I speak of it in these terms because if there's a realization now that things ought to change, and except those who do not want to accept, there are things happening with our national finances that have never happened. I can go on and on. But that's not the point. But I'm saying this because it is a lack of funds that affects the delivery of these social services. And then in turn, it does not feed those who are supposed to generate the money, and then we have this difficulty. So the way to relate to this matter, this water shortage, is that it is only acute, but it has been with us for a long time. And it is time we discuss those long-term, durable strategies for dealing with it.
Okay, now some section of the public thinks the Ghana Water Company has been economical in solving the challenges confronting the water sector.
What do you mean by they have been economical?
They have been economical, asking their problems, their challenges they are facing, take into consideration pipelines which has been used since 1968, no maintenance work, though they claim there is. So I'm thinking, don't you think that is what others are thinking, that they have been economical?
What I have heard from Ghana Water Company has been the fact that they require a certain investment which is not coming. And when Aqua Vitens was contracted as a private manager, they made similar points that, look, yes, we are managing an infrastructure that needs changing. And if you don't deliver on this, it will be hard for us to meet even the targets you gave us. So there may be, there are things, of course, when you call the public relations officer of the Ghana Water Company, he has been employed to provide information in a way that would retain confidence in the organization for which he or she works. I'm landing.
Okay.
And so, yes, they may discuss it in terms that may appear to some people to be deliberate untruths. But I just think the bottom line is that, and they have not hidden this from us, is that we need a certain level of investment. And let us stop, government after government, saying, we need investment. And that's how we solve the problem. Okay. We need investment. And that investment never comes, and we are not hearing the strategies for changing the status quo. I think we should move into a more action-oriented discussion rather than, oh, you know, they need money, they need money.
Now, Sam, do you think the Water Company Limited can fix the problem within the new scheduled time?
You see, I agree on one point with Honorable Kwaku Kwarteng, that we have over the years failed in terms of investment in that sector, in social service delivery. Take, for example, critical social service like water. There has been very little investment by successive governments, okay, in terms of investment into the water sector. You have pipes which were laid under the Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah regime or government, which still exists today. You know, I take, for example, my constituency, Ningo Pram Pram. At a point in time, water was available to flow to the constituency, to the communities, the Pram Pram, Ningo, all the way to Lekbo No. But anytime the headworks were opened and water flowed, the pipes burst because the pipes were so old that they couldn't withstand the pressure with which the water started coming.
So why eventually that sector been neglected then?
No, you see, this is not a question I can answer for the Buzu administration, for the Champon administration, for the Rawlings administration.
Are you not a Ghanaian?
You are a Ghanaian,
I can't answer why they failed. That's what she's asking. Why did they not do that? I can't speak for those governments. So it means that
all governments or past governments.
That is why I said successive governments.
So it's an institutional thing.
Yeah. Successive governments have failed to. And
it means the authorities must be held responsible then.
You should let me land.
Okay.
Because I'm giving a true reflection of the situation. There is light at the end of the tunnel. There is hope now. I'm telling you where we've come from so that we can appreciate where we are going to. You see, as we speak now, I'm using my constituency. New pipes have been laid because as part of the Pond water supply expansion project, and not just in my constituency, in so many other areas, because the Pond water supply expansion project, which is for which reason they're going to be closing down the Pond headworks, is supposed to supply water to areas including but not limited to Adenta, Medina, Kwabenya, Ashongman, Northeast and West Legon, Ashalibutri, Hacho, Boy, Asofa, Domi, Achimota. It's supposed to be completed by the end of 2014. As we speak, it's 80% completed. The remaining 20% is why they need to shut down the waterworks. Now, as you increase expansion, and that is a $273 million facility or project that is going on. So it tells you that, yes, over the years, we have failed to do something about it. But eventually, we have come to that position where we can no longer continue to sit idle. And we need to work on this in these areas, and work is going in there. For the Pond supply expansion project alone, $273 million has gone in there. It's 80% complete, and clearly there's money to continue the job. That is why the Pond water headworks would have been closed since Monday for them to complete the job, but we had to hold it back because of the issues that developed from wager. There's also the Pond intake rehabilitation project, because if you expand your production by an extra 40 million to be able to supply 40 million gallons of water, you need to improve the intake capacity of the plant. That in itself is a 16.5 million euro facility. Now we have what is called the ATMA, the Accra Tema Metropolitan Area Water Supply Project, which is also another 56.5 million euro facility, and all these are facilities that went through Parliament. Okay, this is supposed to it's going to produce 9 million gallons of water per day. It's supposed to have 4 reservoirs, one at Edukrom, one at Dodowa, one at Atimpoku, and one at Akole. You know, and this is supposed to supply areas in the eastern region and Greater Accra region. Areas like Michelle Camp, Afenya, Bone, Pram, Old Ningo, New Ningo, Aitepa, Bono, Omankopi, Kodiabe, Doyum, Agomeda, at Edumanya, Menyum. In the eastern region, you have places like Aprede, Edukrom, Eukugwa, Adewu, Ebiru, Ekropong, Manfi, Amankro, Tutu, Obosumasi, Ashirasi, Ebri, Jankakrom, Pedriasi, Kitasi, Berekusu, Frankedia, Apegusu, Mangwasi, Atimpoku, New Senchi, Akrede. When you go to the Kumasi area or the Ashanti region, we have the Kumasi Water Supply Project, the additional works, which is another 24 million euro project, which is supposed to produce 30 million. Right now, we have 24 million gallons of water a day being supplied. We have to increase it by another 6 million to make it 30 million gallons of water. This is supposed to specifically increase supply of water to the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, the Konfanochi Teaching Hospital, the Yasantiwa Girls Senior High School, Prempeh College, the Kumasi campus of University of Education, Tanoso, Oppong-Yeboah, Kwadaso, and Ibuakwa. There's the Santimampong water supply project. There's the Kwaku Ridge supply project and Sawam water supply project. There's the Teshi Nongwa desalination project. All in all, as we speak at the moment, there is over $500 million worth of work going on in the water sector. The time has come for us to reach water sufficiency in this country, and I'm confident that over the next 2 years we'll be able to put in place infrastructure that will become the bedrock for every successive government going forward to ensure that the people of Ghana have clean, portable and affordable drinking water flowing through their pipes.
Look, quickly. The things my brother mentioned, they've all been done by all previous governments. If you go to the preview, I remember as a government spokesperson on finance, I used to do what he has done. You list a whole lot of projects government is putting, and he mentioned this, and we're here today. Please, let's move away from this. You see, we need government to, for instance, say some of these water delivery areas would be divided, and investors would be made to take the various sections. We sign contracts with them, they invest. Because I believe that many people are willing to pay for more water in their taps than waking up at dawn, having to drive over long distances to fetch water, or buying from these tankers. They bring the water now, they sell per tank 30 cedis, 40 cedis, and you're not sure where the water is coming from. In spite of all that all that the previous administrations have done, the Tamale Water Project and Koforidia, I remember under the previous Kofo administration, I used to talk a lot about the Koforidia Water Project, the Tamale, and we mentioned these and mention. Why? Because we are afraid that if we give the impression the environment, the water delivery is not good, our government will not look good. So we mentioned these, and at Timpoko, and he mentioned almost all the communities in that area, and to give the impression that it is well. It is not well. I think we need, personally, we need infusion of private capital into water delivery. Because we keep saying government will put in money, government doesn't. And then we are afraid that, if it's private people, they will charge us. But when we call the tanker, we pay the money. If you don't call the tanker, you travel over such a long distance, your fuel costs everything. If we need private capital, the evidence is that budget money and the loans, small loans government has been contracting, just would not suffice. And I want to hear, not just from government, but perhaps from all those who are putting forward policies to address this matter, that how do we get a private capital? It might be too much to give the whole of, say, Accra in Tema to one investor. Are we going to divide it? What is best practice? What has happened elsewhere? I think we should get more into that kind of debate. Otherwise, 10 years, 20 years, less people will have water, and we will keep going on about this.
I just need 1 minute. You see, Honorable Kwaku Kwarteng should not equate what he did when the NPP administration was in office to what we are doing.
What are you doing?
Because you see, because I'll take you on some of the things you said. For example, the Koforidia project you speak about, that's the Kwaku Ridge water supply project. It was done. I have visited that site. It was done. And it produces 1 million gallons of water.
You think Koforidia has no water problem?
No. You see, having sufficient.
You disagree with the point I made?
No. I do, because you
disagree that.
You see.
No
As you see, at the time you were saying that there was going to be a project there. There was no project there. A project was done there.
Okay.
Based on what you said, that produces 1 million. Now, if I sit here and say that the Kwaku Ridge water supply project, we are expanding it to 3.5 million to take care of communities like Abeni, Abetifi, Asakraka, Eduama, Bepong, Tafo, Umpraiso, Nkwitia, Nteso, Oboming, Pepasi. It is not propaganda.
Right. I live in New Achimota. I don't have water.
I also live in New Achimota. Water flows once every week.
No,
on Fridays it does flow.
I've lived there for almost how many years
so
now?
you need to check. You need to check your water supply.
I buy water.
Okay, because I live in New Achimota. I get water every Friday. Okay, the taps flow every Friday. So check it. Now another point we should not lose sight of is it appears that Honorable Kwaku Kwarteng has not learned from the mistakes of the past administration, the mistakes of trying to privatize water. If you talk to people in the Ghana Water Company today, they will tell you that the administration of Aquavitins was the worst time for Ghana Water in this country.
No, not privatization.
We should be careful.
Do you understand what I said?
No, you see,
that's private management.
Yes, even if with private management, they could be so abysmal, where government still had a say in it.
Because you don't have money to invest.
When you hand the whole thing over to them, my goodness.
All right. Moving away from that, on the front page of the Daily Post, the controversial issue of Sweba. Now, which doctor certified that Sweba's baby died at birth? New twist here render a bit of the story. The authorities at the Kwarteng Teaching Hospital, after almost 20 days, have failed to produce the body of the newly born baby of Madam Sweba Abdul Mumun. While Sweba and a family insist the child, a male, was born alive, the hospital's authority insists the child was born dead. Now, what is going on? Though there's been investigations ongoing, it's very sad. Like Sammy started, very, very sad. Can we really get to the bottom of the so-called missing dead baby, Honorable Kwarteng?
I hope so. It's particularly sad because losing your baby is bad enough. If you are not sure whether the baby really died, then it's even worse. I mean, it's the reason I share the pain and of this woman. What this issue throws up, and I'm happy the management of Oppong-Yeboah Teaching Hospital have themselves acknowledged. I listened to one of them on radio the day before yesterday, and I like the way he postured, acknowledging that this is wrong, it should not have happened. It is not that there were no institutional arrangement, but they were bypassed. Perhaps what this should lead the hospital to do is to bring in the safeguards, because it is good to have procedures on how you handle these things. But now that we are beginning to realize that things like this can happen, then we should tighten those procedures and perhaps increase the sanctions for violating these procedures, not just to wait till there's an incident like this. The hospital management has put it out that they were those who reported the matter to the police. What I hope is that our security agencies would bring the full capacity of their investigative skills to this matter, so that even if the baby is not alive, the mother can have the baby. And it should be a lesson not just for Oppong-Yeboah Teaching Hospital. Perhaps the ministry would want to take a closer look at how matters like that are dealt with even in the other government hospitals. I mean, I have heard that this kind of thing occurs often. Let this one, because it has got such considerable media attention, let it be the beginning where we will begin to say this thing should not be happening. And in particular, not just the hospital. I mean, the hospital should do their bit and get to the bottom of this matter. The security agency should do that. But as a nation, they should draw our attention to the lapses in handling matters of this nature. And I would want to see the Ministry for Health come out with perhaps improved guidelines and sanctions for managing things like this in all other hospitals in the country. In that way, we would have learned something from what has happened instead of just reducing it to this particular incident and saying they ought to find the baby. Yeah,
so I mean, in every instance there should be documentation. What is the document saying?
You see, this matter of Sweba raises very, very troubling issues. Okay, if you look at it on the front page of the Daily Post, it says more rot at Oppong-Yeboah Teaching Hospital. Patient dies because surgeon refuses to operate on him. That's another Ghanaian life lost. Look, for me, this whole issue about Sweba is acting as a catalyst for us to reform our medical sector. When you go into other jurisdictions where there's so much meticulousness is shown on the part of medical practitioners, it is simply because they fear the kinds of lawsuits that will be brought against them, and the loss of their practicing licenses, we must begin to put in those frameworks in this country. Okay, you sit back and you listen to radio and you hear people tell their stories of the heinous crimes that have been committed against them in this country, and you are baffled at what people have stomached over the years in this country. So many people call into radio stations when this matter is being discussed to tell their stories of how they saw their children. In fact, I heard a story on one of the radio stations of a young man who he had just married, and his wife got pregnant. Their first issue, twin girls. He saw the girls with his own eyes. After that, he didn't see his babies. They said the babies were dead. They didn't produce even the body of one baby. The same Konfanoche Teaching Hospital. Even in Ghana's premier hospital, I buried my uncle 3 weeks ago, a serving member of the Ghana Police Service. His death was attributed to the negligence of doctors at Kolibu. Last week in the news, we heard of a doctor who abandoned a woman in labor to go and attend a meeting, leading to the woman's death. For me, this raises a much bigger problem. And I don't want it to look like I'm picking on doctors, but look, there are fantastic doctors and nurses, fantastic. But you see, amongst that community, you also have some who have made themselves teen gods, who arrogate to themselves the periods and moments when you would live and when you would die. And it is simply because of that nonchalancy with which they operate that people are losing their lives on a daily basis. We must get to the bottom of this. You see, right now we are being told by the hospital, and this will be by issue, that the baby was born dead. The first interview that was granted by the hospital, and I remember when the Daily Post broke this story first, it was interviewed, it was previewed on a sister radio station, Radio Gold, and the PRO, one of the PROs for Konfanoche, was called, and according to him, and I hope that tape is available, he said that the baby was born, the mother saw her baby, they took the baby to go and bath the baby, only for them to come back and tell her, and come and drop a dead baby on her and tell her baby was dead, and then they took the baby and she should sign. They forced her to thumbprint. Now the hospital is coming around again through another PRO to tell us that baby was born dead. You see, these are issues. The Ministry of Health, and on Friday I had to drive to the Ministry of Gender and ask them what are they doing. And so I was glad when on Sunday I read the statements that they had put out, and it was carried out widely yesterday. And I urged that ministry to make sure that psychological care is extended to that woman, because you see, we're not even talking about the trauma she's going through as an individual. Imagine when you lose a loved one and you even bury the person, the pain you go through, and then not even seeing your baby. Now the Ministry of Health says they are going to be addressing the press on Thursday. I need for them to provide more answers than raise questions for us. We must get to the bottom of this. And you see, if this was to be, forgive me, all apologies to the LBGT community, but if this was to be a gay person who had been assaulted, you would have seen all sorts and manners of civil society organizations rising up and speaking. They are all dead silent on this matter. I salute the National Chief Imam for visiting that family and calling on the Asantehene and raising this issue. And I plead with the First Lady to also get involved in this matter and make sure that this woman who is a Ghanaian mother gets closure in this matter.
How pathetic.
I sympathize with all those points, but if the Ministry of Health is going to come out, let us look more to the future. Of course, this matter, we need to get to the bottom of it. But what we can get as a nation is not so much picking on people for getting into this particular matter. It is useful to the extent that it signals that if it happens, you won't get away with it.
All right.
But let us see how it helps us to improve.
Thank you so much for coming. Samba George is a member of the NDC, and Honorable Kwaku Kwarteng is a member of Parliament for Obuasi West. Thank you all for coming. My name is Josephine Oppong-Yeboah. I step in for Randy Abbey. Thanks for watching.
So comes up.